Oh god, it's happening! Dragoon best deck, let's go!
Hi there. Wolfie is feeling a bit under the weather right now.
So we'll be taking over for a bit to bring you an update.
As you can see behind me, the store is undergoing some reconstruction. The main reason being that in the coming week, this series will be getting an overhaul.
Your support so far has been outstanding, so Wolfie decided that it was about time to step up his game a little. But don't be alarmed. Me and Richie aren't going anywhere.
Stop calling me that.
In fact, we'll play a bigger role than ever. But let's get to the changes, shall we?
Starting off, each episode will now only feature 3 duels per video.
Well, not quite. It will feature 3 ranked duels per episode, but there will also be a 4th duel against a viewer.
About time he started accepting duels against them. They have been going wild in the comments for a while.
You could say that again. This brings a few changes towards challenges, as well. Since the amount of duels per episode has decreased, the amount of time to complete a challenge has increased. For now, it's gone from 3 episodes to 5. Wolfie can still only accept 3 challenges at a time, however. The penalty for failing is just as harsh as it ever was, so don't worry.
Speaking of changes, the store is getting a facelift as well. Though you have seen starships in every episode thus far, they haven't had a chance to shine quite yet. That's all about to change. The magical market's shelves will now be filled during Wolfie's Wednesday ladder streams, so you get the excitement of watching my magic at work.
Speaking of which, the streams. Unless you are already a member of the Discord, you may not know that Wolfie now streams every Wednesday and Friday here on YouTube. On Wednesdays he streams his attempt at climbing the Ego Omega ladder using the deck from this series. You could say it's a bridge between weekly episodes. On Fridays, he streams more casual card games. Currently, he's playing through Yu-Gi-Oh! Tag Force for the PSP. The best way to know when he's going live would be to join the Discord.
Ah yes, the Discord. Wolfie wants all of you lovely people to have a chance to impact the series. So if you have a challenge for Tour Guides board, an item for sale in my store, or even want to challenge the man himself, then the Discord is the place you want to be. The link is, as always, in the video description.
I think that covers everything for now. You have all been a fantastic community so far. As we approach the mighty 1000 subscriber mark, all of us would like to extend our deepest gratitude. Without you, we would have never gotten this far.
Alright, that's enough. We still got duels to get to. Oh, and don't worry. The commentary for the duels was recorded ahead of time. Wolfie can rest easy.
Have a great week, everyone.
So for our first duel today, we are playing up against the now somewhat omnipresent Bird Up. Bird Up is essentially a deck that wants to use the Tri-Brigade as well as Laralusks to create a special summon lock that is defended by a Link Karibo as well as Morg. As you can see though, our opponent does not manage to get quite that far. instead managing to only get Fergulit as well as the Wind Statue. We simply decide to normal summon our Trick Clown, beating over the Wind Statue so we can proceed into our combo. Not that we have much of one. We play Foolish Burial in order to get Wendy to the graveyard in order to special summon a beast, and we pass our turn. During our opponent's turn, he skips straight into battle phase in order to crash with our Clown in order to draw a card off of... God, I cannot pronounce this. I think it's Fergit, but who knows. Regardless, he realizes he doesn't get a good enough draw and simply scoops. We go on to game 2, and our hand is equally as interesting. Our opponent starts off by summoning Nerval, which goes into a Linkuriboh, activating Nerval's effect to get Karas. Karas activates, throwing away a card in order to special summon himself, banishing both of the Winged Beast in order to go into Harpy Conductor. Harpy Conductor, together with Karas, makes Simorgh and his Linkuriboh, but he does not have the Wind Statue yet, because we do the fattest Ash Blossom of all time, preventing him from summoning to the field. We attempt to activate our Shaddoll Fusion, which gets hit with a Solemn Judgment of all things. We simply decide to go to Alistair instead, activating the effect of Alistair, which gets hand-trapped. We don't care, we do our Monster Reborn, and for the first time in this series, we can go into Predaplant. We can use Predaplant's effect to send Red Eyes Fusion to the graveyard, summoning the dad himself, Dragoon. Now, Simorgh can't be targeted, but we can simply decide to pop his Linkuriboh for 300 points of damage, and then bashing over Simorgh. He then takes 500 from the Predaplant, and he's going to have to draw one damn good pull off the top in order to get Dragoon. His draw is Monster Reborn, which is good, but is instantaneously negated and is met with the concession. Dad takes his first game. Game number 2, we are actually going up against Madolches. These are OTK machines, and they are terrifyingly good at sticking on the board. Our opponent decides to drop a Pot of Extravagance, which we simply meet with an Ash Blossom, not wanting to deal with it. Then normal summon Petting Sasor, which we try to use an Effect Veiler on to prevent him from going into the Glass Souffle, but he has another one in hand, managing to do so anyway. Souffle sends a card to the graveyard, activating Ticket, which will allow him to special summon when something shuffled, getting into Angeli. Angeli goes into Hootcake. Hootcake activates its effect to get Messenger Lotto, and their combo begins. He draws Promenade to his hand, meaning I know he has it, then going into Fresh Sistar to prevent his back row from being destroyed. This is actually quite a big deal considering we're down 2 cards already. We simply say screw it, we try to activate Magical Meltdown, which manages to go through as we get an Alistair. We do Alistair's effect, and surprisingly he does not meet it with a Promenade. Okay, he instead flips up, goes in match. It doesn't really make much use to us, but we decide to go into App Catalone, and I make a massive misplay targeting Gozen match with a negate when I should have probably gone for Sistart. Regardless, we do manage to get Falco and Beast onto the board afterwards, as we try to go for the Dragoon. And here I forget he has Promenade. I attempt to pop Promenade using Dragon's effect in the graveyard, which gets swiftly met with a bunch of negations. Unsurprisingly, when we notice that the combo is coming on during our turn and we have nothing to swing with to end it, we are in a horrible situation. Now that we know he's free to attack, he can most likely OHKO us, but then comes the major issue we have against facing Madolche, which is Queen Tiramisu. Tiramisu can simply shuffle back cards from the graveyard in order to bounce things to the deck, essentially destroying any hope we have of coming back, so I simply concede and go into game number 2. Now, the issue with Queen Tiramisu is the fact that she doesn't really have to target anything, so whatever she decides to bounce, we just kind of have to accept it. I do believe it still targets, but it's so disruptive, especially for us. We have so many, like, destruction prevention effects, but we can't really deal with having cards bounce back. Our opponent is going second this time, but our hand started with 3 Wendy's and a Super Poly, which is not great. We have to fire it off early, going into Shekanaga in defense mode, hoping that we can at least set up for a following turn, knowing that he only summoned Puddingcess. However, he has a Dark Ruler no more, meaning he's free to combo off anyway as he gets Hootcake onto the board. Hootcake fetches Angeli, and oh boy, here we go. Angeli gets Messengelato. Messengelato draws him Madolche Salon, and Salon is also kind of scary as it allows him to draw cards whenever something's shuffled back. Tiramisu comes back again, and all of our board advantage is shuffled away like it was nothing. Madolche Chateau also gets set, which he decides to activate right off the bat, essentially giving his Madolches an extra boost for each Madolche, turning them absolutely goddamn huge. So now we can't beat over them, and we can't stick on the board. Yikes. Queen Tiramisu also still has one material left as we draw into Red Eyes Black Dragon. So not only did we brick hard on our opening hand, we also brick with a Red Eyes. Hoo boy. Yeah, at this point, we already know we're going to get O-code. Whatever he summons is going to be enough to start his combo to kill us, so I simply scoop them up, enrage myself, and I go next. Going next, we have the most interesting game of today. We're going up against Dollmatika Invoked. Yep, it is another Shaddoll mirror match. I am happy to see these every now and again because, that means we're making an impact on the meta of YGO Omega, I suppose. Our opponent's turn starts off very easy by setting 2 and passing as we begin by using an Allure of Darkness, then attempting to summon Alistair. Alistair gets ashed, unfortunately, so we are forced to set a card and pass the turn. Dark Magician also makes an appearance. Our opponent attempts, for some reason here, to use Pot of Extravagance in a deck that needs the Fusion deck. We simply decide to ash it, making sure he gets no advantage, and when he tries to activate Wendy's effect is when I realize, holy shit, he's going for it. We just decide to negate it with Effect Veiler, so that he doesn't get an extra summon. On the following turn, we'd use our second Allure of Darkness that we started with in hand, forcing to set 1 and pass again. Unfortunately, we also have to throw our Dark Magician for that Allure, so Dragoon is no longer an option. Our opponent simply sets 1 and passes to where we flip open our own Wendy. Wendy, however, gets hit with an Ash, so we go into the battle phase and we decide to crash them when he flips Dogmatica Punishment. You know it's bad when you have to punishment a 1500 beat stick. He does, however, send a Wendy to the graveyard in order to get a beast on the board, and our hand really can't do anything against this. It doesn't have a fusion card on the board, so our Shaddoll Fusion is simply not live. We have a Super Poly that we realistically can use, but we just have to wait for the correct moment, because remember, they are Shaddolls, so we can simply steal them and make our own fusions with them. He does go into the battle phase, and we decide, okay, this is good enough as any. We activate Super Poly, ditching our El Shaddoll Fusion to get an Apkalone onto the board, Apkalone not using its effect because there is no good targets. Our opponent then sets 1, sets 2, and voila, it is our move. We draw into Red Eyes Black Dragon again. These guys are making a very strong appearance now. We know this is an Ariel, so we simply decide to beat over it, knowing it has no target in the banish, to which he flips Schism. As Schism gets activated on selected target, we decide to simply fuse off our Apkalone into a Wendy, and the only reason we do this is to activate Apkalone's effect. Apkalone's effect will allow us to draw into a dragon, which we can send to destroy Schism. Schism is our worst nightmare here. During main phase 2, we attempt to go for the Shaddoll Fusion, which gets hit with another Ash, and we are now empty-handed against a Winda. And his 2 back row, 1 set, and now Winda. For some reason, he decides not to attack during his turn, which confuses me, as we draw into an Ash, and I'm simply forced to pass. However, I'm happy I didn't set that, because he draws a Pot of Extravagance, which we can hit with the Ash. He has 1 card left in his extra deck, in a Shaddoll something deck. That's pretty good for us. Our top deck is even better, as it's another Shaddoll Fusion. Shaddoll Fusion pops up, and we decide to go for Ariel to make sure that he cannot get that Schism back when Winda dies. Dragon pops a back row, which turns out to be Torrential Tribute. Why he didn't pop that now, I don't know. Oh, he can't, because Magical Meltdown. Hey, I figured it out myself. We attack into Winda, getting it to the graveyard, destroying it by Construct Effect. He is forced to put his Squamata into defense position, and this game is looking better and better. Although we don't have no cards in our hand, and we draw into another Ash, just bashing over his Squamata will do. At this point, he's left with 2 back row that we don't know what they are, 1 card in his extra deck, and probably no way of dealing with the construct. We draw into Pancratops, which is quite amazing. We go into battle phase again and beat into his face-down monster, which turns out to be Falco. Falco is attempting to bring back a Squamata, which he's going to use to pop our construct, is what I'm assuming. We simply have to pass the turn on that, knowing that it's going to pop Squamata no matter what we do. As he attempts to target our construct, however, we decide to flip the El Shaddoll Fusion, fusing away our construct with the Pancratops in order to make Shekinaga. Construct's effect will activate, pulling a Shaddoll Fusion back to our hand as he activates Nadir Servant. We attempt to ash it, but it gets hit with a Solemn Strike! Oh! He draws into Ecclesia, but at this point, he also sends Entis as cost, meaning he can destroy our Shekinaga. His extra deck is now empty. Ecclesia gets summoned as he draws a punishment to his hand, but punishment can't be used because there's no extra deck targets! What is this man thinking? He does beat us for a hefty amount of damage, though, draining us down to 2,400 life points with no monster in hand. It's not looking great. We do draw into a Wendy, however, and we are able to set it. Hopefully, he bashes into it without doing anything else, allowing us to draw something stronger. He does just that. Going into the battle phase, Ecclesia attacks into Wendy, and Wendy's effect will activate, bringing up a Falco. Falco, the card we rarely use, is going to be a star player here, because when flipped up, we can bring back Construct, and Construct is a big freaking deal. We decide to do exactly that, flipping open Falco, picking Construct as our target, summoning it face down. We now have a strong girl on board, to which he changed another Torrential Tribute. Yikes! Construct effect still activates, as well as his Shaddoll cards, unfortunately, as he banishes Alistair and our 2 fusion monsters in the graveyard. We simply set our Squamata, set 1, and we pass. Our opponent then activates Sinister Shadow Games in order to send Hedgehog to the graveyard in order to draw the strongest attack Shaddoll he can, which is a dragon. He does exactly that. He sets 1 and does nothing. Probably correct on his choice there. We do have to set 1 and pass here because we need our card to be face down, to which he activates Dynamiscus, forgetting that Dynamiscus can only target face-up cards, banishing our Magical Meltdown. On our following turn, we simply flip open Squamata, now that we know his dragon is already gone, and we beat him for a chunk of damage, and this is getting good. At this point, our opponent simply sets 1 and passes, to which we say, sure thing, buddy. We draw into an Alistair, we normal summon the Alistair, he knows what's coming, and he scoops up. That was a horribly long game. Jesus. For game number 2, our starting hand is almost as good as the first one. He does go for the Extravagance again, which again gets met with an Ash Blossom. I think we've ashed every single Extravagance this week, as we draw into another Alistair, which is kind of unfortunate because that means our Magical Meltdown has no target. We decide to disregard that and attempt to grab an Invocation anyway, which gets hit with an Ash, unfortunately, so we simply have to deal 1,000 damage and pass our turn. We still have a Veiler in hand in case he decides to go crazy. He does, however, just set 2 cards and pass the turn back to us. It doesn't seem like his hand is all that great. We attempt to go for the second Alistair in order to draw the Invocation, which gets met with a Solemn Strike. Kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. We then decide, now that the hand is free, to use our entire hand to go into Construct, banishing every single card in his graveyard and getting a beast on board. At this point, he flips Torrential Tribute again. I'm starting to hate this card because it's always unexpected. He brings a Falco onto the board from his deck. We get a Super Poly as well as an El Shaddoll Fusion. Not really helpful in this specific case. He activates an Dear Servant to go into Ecclesia, and manages to get Schism to his hand. And Schism is terrifying. Ecclesia gets special summoned, activating its effect to grab a punishment from the deck. He flips open Falco. Falco only having 1 target in his graveyard currently, which is Ariel. And he beats in for a hefty chunk of damage. We are again in a decently bad position here, but with Super Poly we can pull off some quite interesting things. Our opponent then sets both Schism and Punishment, since we know that's what they are, as we draw into a Hedgehog. We attempt to Super Poly into our own construct using both of his monsters, sending a Shaddoll Fusion to the graveyard. Immediately upon summoning, he flips open Punishment, which sends Construct to the graveyard. We get our Shaddoll Fusion back, we set our Hedgehog, and we pass turn. He sent Omega as cost, meaning he returned Omega to the deck, together with a Dogmatica Punishment. He then flips open Schism, but decides not to use its fusion effect. We draw into Dark Magician, forcing us to just pass our turn. He, second turn, uses Schism's effect to summon into Winda, and at this point, it's getting a little bit scarier. He flips open Ariel in order to get Hedgehog face down, or sorry, Falco face down in case something bites the dust. Attacking into our Hedgehog grants us a Reshaddoll Incarnation, which is probably the first and only time I will fetch this card out of the deck using his effect. However, after that, he simply passes turn to us, where we draw a Ghost Bell. We activate our Shaddoll Fusion going into Apkallone, and instead of destroying the Schism, instead of destroying the Schism, we actually decide to negate it permanently using Apkallone and using Dragon's effect that we sent off of Shaddoll Fusion in order to destroy his other back row, which turns out to be Dynamiscus. We then punch over Winda and pass turn. Our opponent then flips open Falco, attempting to get the Winda back, to which we actually Ghost Bell. That is a very good card at this point. Aria's effect is attempted to activate, getting rid of our Construct, which we chain our Incarnation to bring Construct back before banishment, and our opponent concedes. We took another mirror match down. That is amazing. For the fourth duel, we are going up against Magical Musketeers. Our opponent starts off by summoning Magical Musketeer Starfire, setting 2 magnificent cards that I probably don't want to deal with, and passing turn. Unfortunately, we managed to hard open Red Ice Fusion, which I decide to fire off, and for some reason, it actually goes off. Our opponent tries to Desperado his own creep, then going into Crooked Crown in order to draw into more cards, which we attempt to negate, get met with a solid strike, and his board is just left wide open. We go in with Dragoon for 3k, and immediately upon realizing his massive mistake, our opponent draws a card and concedes. Probably the fastest game 1 we've had in a very long time. Game 2, however, won't be that easy. Our starting hand is much worse going up against magical muskets, but we are able to go into a construct and getting a beast onto the board at the very least. We do send a Shaddoll Fusion to the graveyard here because we know that Construct is most likely going to bite the dust because we're going to go into Dragoon. We use Construct effect to get our Shaddoll Fusion back, activating Red Ice Fusion thanks to Anaconda, and going into our Dragoon once again to set up the best board we can end on given the circumstances. Our opponent then attempts to activate Mystic Mine, which is immediately negated because the only out I have to it is 1 Twin Twister. He goes into Starfire, attacking into Dragoon, and I'm very confused, but then I see the Honest come down. Honest is able to take it out, unfortunately. We flip open Beast, hoping that we have some sort of retort to this, which gets ashed. At this point, we simply have to go in for the attack, hoping he doesn't hold any of the trap cards, and he doesn't, apparently. We are able to beat over his Starfire, dealing him a small chunk of damage, setting an El Shaddoll Fusion, and passing turn. Our opponent, however, draws into, I believe it's Desperado, I never remember, Starfire, I don't know the Magical Musketeer. It's the 1800 beat stick that attempts to destroy our little snaky boy. We decide to chain off of that, going into Winda to try and prevent him from doing any shenanigans. He draws 2 cards because a spell card in his zone was activated, unfortunately, and then he passes turn. We attempt to go in for the kill here, but he does have the spell card that sets our attack to 0, so we are forced to Super Poly off into a Construct. This does nicely refill our hand, however, thanks to Hedgehog, and as well as Winda hitting the grave, so we can pick up another fusion card. We punch it for 2,800, set 1, and we pass. At this point, he draws into another Starfire, meaning he is still active as he goes for Desperado, attempting to destroy our Construct, but we have the El Shaddoll Fusion fusing into Apkalone, silencing the Starfire, preventing it from drawing anything. At this point, our opponent knows that it is not looking great for him. He goes into Max, attempting to search 2 cards as he does. One of them is a Spell Negate, the other one is a 0 Attack Maker. As we draw into Super Poly yet again, we realize, okay, we can go ham here. Our Shaddoll Fusion is negated, unsurprisingly, as we attempt to activate Falco. Falco gets met with a Solemn Strike. He is now dangerously low on life points, but I suppose I see the reasoning. We attempt to attack in knowing that he is going to hit us with the 0 attack, but we actually want our Apkalone to bite the dust. In doing so, we can set up for next turn for the kill. He activates Terraforming, going into Mystic Mine, but knowing if he activates Mystic Mine now, he won't be able to attack me to try and get me down, he doesn't activate it. We take 1,000 damage, and we draw into Phantasme. That's not great. We simply have to set the Wendy and hope for the best that he can't get enough damage to break us. He draws a card and then simply passes turn, knowing that, okay, he doesn't have anything. We normal summon Alistair, getting an invocation to hand, and then immediately super polying away his only Magical Musketeer on the board. He can't activate anything from hand, and one of the cards is Mystic Mine anyway. We use Mechaba to punch in for game, and that will be it. That was getting dangerous. I always hate going up against Magical Musketeers. Now, unfortunately, you could probably see the black screen in the background, and that's because the last duel of today has gone missing. More correctly, the replays didn't save as they should, and the footage is very bad. So I will simply summarize exactly what happened. We went up against Big Ritual Boys, which is essentially running Necros as well as Blue Eyes White Dragon Chaos Max. Turbo, attack for a lot of damage, and it's untargetable, and it's a mess. You'll see them on screen. I can summarize this very easily. Game number 1, we are going second. Our opponent sets up the Necros that prevents extra deck monsters' effects from ever being activated. On the following turn, he simply summons Chaos Max, and we die. Very easy. Game number 2 goes the same way. We decide to go first this time, as I do manage to get a Winda onto the board turn 1, which is swiftly dealt with a Kaiju, as he goes into the combo, and he OTKs us. We take a 0-2 against the big ritual boys, unfortunately.